Jamestown This Morning Blend. You know, September was Suicide Prevention Month. Here to talk about that is Dr. Kelly Posner Gerstenhaber, the founder of the Columbia Lighthouse Project and creator of the Columbia-Suicide Severity Rating Scale, that's a mouthful, and Dr. Keita Franklin, co-director of the Columbia Lighthouse Project. And we're going to talk a little bit about suicide and getting help for those who need it most. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. So again, Dr. Kelly Posner Gerstenhaber, I'm going to ask you first, is suicide preventable?
It absolutely is preventable, and that's the great news. There is hope, there is help, but this is still the tragic paradox that takes more firemen than fire, more police than crime, more lives than car accidents. It's the second leading cause of death in 10 to 24-year-olds in this nation, and everybody is touched. Did you know 135 people are affected by every death, and these effects linger across generations because of the silence that often follows. And that's the first thing we need to address, the silence, and we have to find people who are suffering in silence, and we know how to do that.
Dr. Franklin, why is it important to talk about suicide?
It's important just because, as Dr. Posner described, it's such a leading cause of death in our nation. And if we're ever going to make a difference, and if we're ever going to get the numbers to go down and actually prevent suicide, and what we know is even one suicide is too many, then we need to start talking about it more. We need to start normalizing these conversations, and we need to make sure people are comfortable asking questions about suicide risk.
Dr. Franklin, how do you start a conversation with someone who may be considering suicide?
It's such a good question because people are sometimes scared to have this conversation, and in part they worry that if they ask somebody if they're struggling with suicide, that they'll give them the idea, and and then they'll go and they'll end their life by suicide. But people should know that that's absolutely not the case. Asking somebody questions about suicide actually shows you care about them. It shows that you're there for them and that you're willing to go the extra mile to do whatever you can to keep them safe. So simple questions initially, simple comments, even like, I'm worried about you, I care about you, and then sort of describing what you see in their life, describing patterns that you see, and then telling them why you're concerned about them is a good way to kind of just start edging your way into the conversation, and then moving the conversation towards more concrete, very direct questions about suicide risk is also critically important. And I know Dr. Posner has some information and can share about these direct questions in the context of the Columbia-Suicide Severity Rating Scale that we both work with.
Well, Dr. Partners, I'll leave it to you. Tell us about Columbia-Suicide Severity Rating Scale.
Yes, or the Columbia Protocol. And I wanted to say that one of the myths is that if you ask, it will cause somebody to be suicidal. It's actually the opposite. When people are suffering, they actually want help. So the Columbia Protocol is a few simple questions that empowers anybody, teacher to doctor, janitor to lawyer, to ask direct questions that will tell you who to worry about and who needs to be connected to evaluation and care. In the past, nobody knew what questions to ask, they didn't know what to do with the answers, and they didn't know if they should ask. And now what we know is, that 50% of suicides see their primary care doctor the month before they die. We need to be asking like blood pressure, and we need to be doing it well beyond the doctor's office. We need to coach, doctor, loved one, neighbor, particularly now during COVID when peer-to-peer and people right next to you are the ones that we need to find and connect to.
Doctors, very interesting question for me. You have people who take drugs, who are drug addicts, people who are alcoholics, and of course depression during this COVID period. Are those people more susceptible to thoughts of suicide and suicide itself?
I would say that, first of all, what we know is the biggest cause of suicide is this treatable illness called depression. And because of the stigma attached to it, not thinking about it like a medical illness, up to 75% of people do not get simple life-saving antidepressants. So what they do instead is they try to self-medicate in lieu of proper treatment. So whether it's opioids or alcohol, it's very often people desperately trying to feel better without the right kind of care. So even more so, we need to, again, find the people and ask and monitor as much as we can so we can get them the help that they need.
You know, where can our viewers go for more information?
So you can go to c-ssrs.columbia.edu. We have an app. You can go into the App Store, either Apple or Android. It's the Columbia Protocol, and we are here to help any individual or community be empowered to be part of the solution to save lives.
You know, I wish I had known about this earlier. I lost a very, very close friend earlier this year to overdose. And I'm pretty sure that he was pretty depressed.
And that's the thing. People often don't have the will to come to you, and they suffer in silence. And we're learning, and we keep on, you know, doing what we learn that will help us connect those people to care.
Doctors, thank you so much for joining us on Morning Blend. We really appreciate the information.
Thank you so much.